Hi, I'm Rahel Philipose, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express News Show. In this episode, we talk about the political controversy surrounding the recent communal tensions in Haryana. We also give you a quick update on the government's decision to restrict the import of some electronics. But first, we talk about Article 370. Back in August 2019, the Indian government bifurcated Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories and abrogated Article 370, effectively revoking its special status. This status is what allowed J&K to have its own constitution, its own penal code, and what determined the right of permanent residence in the region. However, on Wednesday, nearly 4 years after this, the Supreme Court started hearing a batch of petitions that challenged the legality of this move. To know what the petitions argue and what the government has said in response, the Indian Express's Apurva Vishwanath joins us in this segment. So Apurva, could you begin by telling us what Article 370 had meant for J&K and how it came about?
So 1950, when the Constitution of India comes into force, Article 370 basically defines the relationship India would have with the state. This is because the Instrument of Accession had been signed in 1947 and the Maharaja of Jammu and Kashmir, Hari Singh, had agreed to allow the Indian Parliament to govern essentially three subjects: foreign affairs, defense and communications. So that agreement sort of had to be codified and given effect to in the Constitution of India. So Article 370 is that governing law that dictates the relationship that these two entities had.
Right. And abrogating Article 370 has been on the BJP's ideological agenda for a long time. But what did the government say at the time and why did it do so?
So the government's arguments were always that Article 370 has been a temporary provision, and to integrate Jammu and Kashmir fully with the Indian state, you had to do away with 370 and make it at par with any other state in the country. So this has always been the BJP stand, and this is something that the government also talked about when they essentially diluted Article 370. Article 370 itself has a provision, which is Clause 3 of Article 370, which talks about when this provision or when this relationship between India and Jammu and Kashmir could cease to operate. But the provision essentially says that the President of India, by notification, may declare that this provision will cease to operate, but he can only do so with the consent of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. So what was happening in 1950 was that while the Indian Constitution was being drafted, parallelly there was also this communication with Maharaja Hari Singh, and the course of action in Kashmir was, although on some legislative issues India would decide for Jammu and Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir itself would have its own Constituent Assembly and come up with its own constitution, and that constitution would later dictate the relationship between India and Jammu and Kashmir. So for the interim period, that is when the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir would be in existence, the Indian Constitution said, in case you want to change Article 370, in case you want to change the relationship between India and Jammu and Kashmir, that can happen only on the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. So that provision, that Clause 3 of 370, is what the government essentially used to issue a presidential order which nullified Article 370's application when it came to Jammu and Kashmir.
And now the Supreme Court on Wednesday began hearing petitions which actually challenged the abrogation of Article 370 and the downgrading of J&K into two union territories. Could you tell us what these petitions argue?
So, there have been a clutch of petitions since 2019 when the government decided to abrogate Article 370. One of the preliminary questions that the court had decided back in 2019 was whether a larger bench should hear this issue, and the court was not in favor of that. So the Supreme Court said that a 5-judge constitution bench is sufficient to hear this issue. So now what the court is basically looking at is the legality of the government's move. The government had 4 laws that it came up with on 5th August 2019, which included the bifurcation of Jammu and Kashmir and also a presidential order which did some crucial changes that would aid in the interpretation of Article 370. So the procedure of these, the legality of this is what is under challenge. The procedure becomes an issue because at that time in 2019, Jammu and Kashmir was under governor's rule. So the governor, assuming the powers of the legislature of Jammu and Kashmir, recommends these changes, and the president's notification is based on that. So whether that was a legal move or not, whether that was constitutionally valid, is something that the court will now have to decide. So like we discussed, Clause 3 of 370 required the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. So what the changes that were made on 5th August in 2019 were to interpret this Constituent Assembly to mean the legislature of Jammu and Kashmir. But the legislature was not functioning because there was governor's rule. So the governor, assuming the powers of the legislature, makes this recommendation to the president. So this series of actions which gave effect to these constitutional moves in 2019, that will now have to be tested by the Supreme Court. And the court will have to say whether the Indian Parliament could change the character of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir to mean legislature of Jammu and Kashmir, and by extension, the governor, and the whole box opens up for debate.
Okay, and the hearing started on Wednesday. Could you talk about what we've heard from the government so far?
So the government has been, in its affidavit to the court, has reiterated its stance pretty much that it has held since 2019 on officially that the removal of Article 370 is in the interest of national integration, and Article 370 has always been a temporary provision anyway, and it also defends the parliament's powers to dictate its relationship with the state. So as far as the government is concerned, it's been a clear view and consistent view on this issue. What the petitioners will now have to show to the court is that the process that the government adopted is not legal, is not permissible. These complex legal maneuvers to achieve what Senior Advocate Kapil Sibal has essentially been arguing, a political decision. What we've heard him argue yesterday and today is that this is a political outcome that the government wanted, and to achieve that, it used constitutional means. Whether those means are justified, whether those means are constitutional, is what is being debated in the Supreme Court.
Right. And Apurva, the government has also said that it has brought unprecedented development, progress, security and stability to the region, which was often missing during the old Article 370 regime. Will this at all be taken into consideration while deciding on the matter?
So the political and social context of this case is not lost on anybody, least of all the Supreme Court judges. So while they are aware of the complexities of this case and what the government's position on this has been, the question of whether abrogation of Article 370 has brought in a decline in militancy in the state, for example, these are not issues before the court. What the court has to look into is the promises that were made between India and Maharaja Hari Singh from 1947 to 1957 till the Jammu and Kashmir Constitution came into being. What are the sanctity of those agreements and the constitutional boundaries that we set for ourselves when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir?
And next we talk about the political controversy surrounding the recent communal tensions in Haryana. On Monday, communal clashes erupted in the Nuh district of the state during a yatra organized by the Bajrang Dal and the Vishwa Hindu Parishad. The violence also soon spread to Gurgaon, resulting in the death of 6 people and leaving several others injured. And since then, the police have arrested 176 people and have taken 78 more into preventive detention. Now, in the wake of the violence, the opposition has vehemently come out to criticize the state government, alleging that it turned a blind eye to intelligence inputs, warning of the possibility of such violence. On the other hand, the Haryana Chief Minister stated that the violence is the result of a conspiracy by a few people. To know more about this row, my colleague Utsa Sarmin speaks to the Indian Express's Varinder Bhatia in this segment.
So Varinder, to begin with, could you tell us what did the Haryana Chief Minister Manohar Lal Khattar say about the communal clashes in the state?
Yeah, the Chief Minister, he has been hinting at the possibility of a planned conspiracy behind the violence that erupted in Nuh. In fact, it's not only the Chief Minister, but even the Home Minister, Anil Vij. He too has said that it looks like a well-planned conspiracy and the state police shall definitely unearth it and punish the culprits. Both the Chief Minister and the Home Minister had been saying it from the beginning that the State Police Department is thoroughly investigating all the aspects that resulted in this violence. But the government's first priority is to restore normalcy, especially in the new and neighboring districts, and restoring the communal peace and harmony in the area.
Right, and at the same time, the Deputy Chief Minister, Dushyant Chautala, said that this happened because the yatra was not managed properly. Could you discuss what the kind of mismanagement he was talking about?
Basically, the Deputy CM pointed out that the Yatra organizers did not provide the actual crowd estimation numbers to the district administration. You see, before any such gathering, these organizers, they are supposed to provide the estimate crowd numbers to the district administrations so that an adequate police arrangement or law and order arrangement can be made. So the Deputy CM said that he has learned that the actual numbers were not provided by the organizers to the district administration. Another thing which he pointed out was that the superintendent of police knew he had gone on leave. And another officer who was given the additional charge of the area on that day when the violence took place might not have assessed the situation proper. So these are the things on which he has hinted that this is the kind of mismanagement he has said. And he has said that probably this could also be one of the reasons that resulted in this violence.
Okay, now the situation has sparked a political controversy in the state, with the opposition accused the state government of deliberately ignoring the intelligence inputs. So what specific types of intelligence inputs is the opposition referring to in this case?
See, the opposition is basically pointing out about the intelligence inputs, which had hinted at a large crowd build-up in the yatra and possibilities of a tension because there were several people in the yatra who were carrying swords and some other kind of weapons. So there was a intelligence input regarding that. There were reports also submitted to the state government about possibility of a tension in the area due to the large crowd build-up. But these are routine procedures. The intelligence submit their reports to the government before any such major gatherings. So now what the government has been saying is that the intelligence reports that they received, they were acted upon and adequate security was deployed. But yet some miscreants got into the crowd and created this tension to disturb this peace and harmony. But all these things are still being investigated by the police, and the government says that they'll definitely reach a conclusion soon.
And Varinder, the opposition also highlighted the role of social media and a video by the self-proclaimed cow vigilante Monu Manesar, which they say has contributed to the violence. So tell us what the opposition has been saying about that and how the state government is dealing with this issue.
The thing is that Lok Sabha elections are scheduled for next year. In fact, the state legislative assembly elections are also scheduled to be held in October next year in Haryana. And opposition is obviously using every opportunity to attack the ruling party. And while we talk about this one person, Monu Manesar, who's wanted by Rajasthan police in a criminal case, he released one video a couple of days before this incident took place, in which he's seen saying that, kind of announcing that he will also be a part of this procession, and he's appealing to a lot of his supporters to be part of this procession. There are several other videos also. There are several other videos of these cow vigilantes as well, kind of provocative videos in which they are announcing that they'll also be part of this procession and all that. But yesterday, the Home Minister, Anil Vij, what he said, like, it should not be taken as one and only one reason for this violence. He has said that all these videos, they are being analyzed. All the social media content is also being analyzed. In fact, he said that we have constituted a 3-member committee which is going to scan all the social media content right from July 21st till July 31st. And they are going to find out if there were any hate speeches or if there were any provocative videos that could have resulted in this tension.
Right, and another point raised by the opposition is regarding the SLIC, the State Level Integration Committee. This committee was formed by the Haryana government earlier this year, just before the Bhiwani killings, where 2 people were allegedly killed by cow vigilantes. So can you tell us what this committee is supposed to do?
See, this SLIC, this was notified, I guess, in February this year. And this committee with the Chief Minister as its chairman and the Home Minister, the DGP, the additional DGP, Intelligence, Law and Order, and several officials of the Home Department were made its members. The committee's primary role was to quarterly review of the communal harmony in the state. That was the mandate of this committee. But it is yet not clear if this committee had any such meeting ever since it was constituted. So it's yet to be seen if this committee met and what did they discuss in their meeting.
Okay, and an MLA from the opposition INLD party criticized the committee for failing to prevent the recent violence, right?
Yeah, NLD's MLA, he had tweeted this committee and he has raised questions that if such a committee was there in place. So southern Haryana, like particularly Nuh and Mewat region, it is known to be certain sensitive areas. So this committee, if it was already in place, so what did this committee actually do to review the situation in Nuh so that such a violence could be prevented? So all these things are yet to be seen that how the government responds. So far, they have not responded to the question of this committee yet.
Right, and Varinder, considering all this, what kind of impact do you think this might have on the BJP in the state, especially considering that the region has not experienced communal tensions of this scale before?
See, communal tension, of course, yes. I mean, Haryana has not seen this kind of a communal tension in the past, but there have been major law and order incidents. If we talk about in the last 10 years, there have been number of such incidents, major law and order problems for the state government. I think in 2016, there was a Jat agitation. There were clashes which went on for, I think, about 2-3 weeks. There were curfews imposed. There were internet ban imposed. Paramilitary was called. So that time also more than 30 people lost their lives in that agitation. Then subsequent to that, I think in 2017, when this Dera Sacha Sauda chief was convicted, then also his supporters created ruckus and crossed the state. And more than, I think, 40 people died in that incident as well. But still in 2019, yes, BJP, although they fell short of the majority mark, they could not attain the 46 seats in the 90-member house in Haryana, but they still managed to form the government. They entered into an alliance with Dushyant Chautala-led JJP, and they formed the government. It's been more than 3.5 years. Now, the second tenure also, they have faced the farmers' agitation, which went on for approximately 1 year. And after that, there have been agitations and here and there in several parts of the state. But more or less, the government had been saying that sometimes it's the opposition is also adding fuel to the fire, or these are the sponsored agitations. So that's about it. Its impact or how it turns out to be for the BJP or for the JJP or any other party in 2024, it's yet to be seen.
And finally, we give you a quick update on the government's decision to restrict the import of some electronics.
Now the government has announced a big change in import policy for laptops, all-in-one computers, tablet PCs.
Now this move aims to curtail inbound shipments of these goods from countries like China.
The move is pretty similar to the one imposed in 2020 for imported televisions. Now,
on Thursday, the Directorate General of Foreign Trade announced that it was imposing restrictions on the import of laptops, tablets, and computers with immediate effect. According to the notification, the import of computers and other items under the 7 categories of HSN Code 8471 have been restricted. The HSN Code 8471 is used to identify all devices that are designed to perform data processing tasks like computers and laptops. However, the restriction will not be applicable to imports under the baggage rules. Now, the aim of the government's latest move is to promote domestic manufacturing of these products and curtail the majority share of imports of these items from China. With this, the import of these devices will only be allowed against a valid license for restricted imports. The government has also exempted laptops, tablets, all-in-one personal computers and ultra-small form factor computers from import licensing requirements if they are essential part of capital goods. And for the purpose of research and development, testing, benchmarking, and product development purposes, the government has given exemption from import license for imports up to 20 items per consignment. The condition, however, would be that these imports will be allowed only for use for the stated purposes and not for sale. The move is being seen as a direct boost to the centre's recently renewed production-linked incentive, the PLI scheme for IT hardware. A senior government official told the Indian Express that the measure is to push companies to manufacture locally in India as the country looks to strengthen its domestic production prowess in the electronics sector. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was hosted by me, Rahel Philipose, and written and produced by Utsa Sarmin, me, Rahel Philipose, and Shashank Bhargava, who originally spoke to Apurva for the first segment. It was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone who you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.